VW Golf R Mark 7.5 in Lapis Blue. A little over 4,000 miles on the clock. The client is a new customer to WhiteDetails, and the vehicle is booked for a 2 to 3 stage paint correction detail to eliminate surface swirling and defects, before locking in with protection courtesy of Modesta BCO8, the wheels with BCO6, and then the disc hubs are to be refinished and painted to give that fresh look behind the wheels. So stay tuned and welcome to WhiteDetails. First things first then, full wash decontamination with a wet work outside. The car's a clean example, but the door shuts, the sills, inside the boot jam, it all needs to be flushed, it needs to be cleaned before we can start polishing in a few hours time. A degreaser and the Detail Factory extremely soft brush were used inside the door shuts before being flushed. It is worth having a separate individually dedicated towel to one side for the wiping down of the surrounding plastics, the seat base and the sides of the dashboard, because in the rinsing phase it is impossible not to get 1 or 2 drips in places, but if you're controlled, it's efficient, it's safe, it's not a problem. But when it comes to the boot hinges, however, I would probably avoid direct pressure washing in here because there's a high chance of soaking the insides. So the rinsing aspect is done from the exterior. And a little trick you might want to try is actually doing so without the pressure washer attachment. Just use the open hose on the lance itself to allow the water to flow and trickle through whilst rinsing as you go. So now at this stage, before we make contact with the bodywork directly, or even before we use a pre-wash, it is very important to use the pressure washer to its utmost potential in removing as much of the loose, damaged material off the surface of the paint and wheels and trim and glass and window rubbers as possible. I would actually go as far as saying that the pre-rinse stage is probably more important than the pre-wash stage in my opinion. Both do play their part, but I do feel as though the rinsing stage from both professionals and beginners is often overlooked. So a good 5 minutes later, we're going to deliver a thick blanket of foam to allow the nooks and the crannies, the window rubbers and the intricate areas that are hard to reach with a wash mitt to be tackled with the Detail Factory brush. Moving on to the 2 bucket wash, a rinse bucket and a shampoo bucket, working high, working around the car, saving the lower portions until very last with a separate wash medium. And then on to the first of the decontamination stages with the paint, with a chemical to remove tar deposits, any stray tar deposits that are stuck to the Lapis Blue bodywork. Making the most of the space I have outside of the yard at this point to dry the discs off before we come inside. And onto the ramp, ready for the clay bar treatment. Two clean and fresh sections of clay bar being dropped and submerged into boiling hot water. The idea with the hot water is going to keep the clay malleable and supple, so it's easy to use and soft. Whilst the clay is soaking, the wheel nut covers are removed, the wheels are slackened off, ready to come off the vehicle and removed fully once it's fully up on the ramp. And then the wheels are identified with individually coloured and stamped valve cap covers, so that the near side front, near side rear, offside front, offside rear ends up back in the right place. Well, to be honest, decontamination clay bar, I wasn't expecting a great deal off this car because it's pretty clean. But this is the back of the clay, the unused side, and then plenty of pickup and contaminants lifted from just half the roof, the panoramic roof, and the spoiler. To finish off the high surfaces, the top deck, spoiler, and glass, get it jacked up on the ramp, continue around the car. Whoa. The black lines and the black streaks you can see here on the clay bar, that's actually strayed tar deposits that are found high up on the tailgate glass. Admittedly missed by me during the chemical wash and decant phase whilst outside. And then finally, before we reach for the Big Boy Blow R Pro to eliminate trapped water and blow the vehicle down and blow the vehicle dry, what I like to do at this point is just get a bit of a head start with the drying inside the door shuts and the panel gap. So again, it's a towel that's devoted only for this job, but it's used to dry the door shuts down, a bit of a head start, a bit of a final clean, before they get a final going over with the Big Boy Blow R Pro. With the wheels now clean, there's a handful of stray tar deposits once again on the rims inside and out to pick up and remove before we pack away and prep, ready for some polishing. that's the full safe wash, decontamination complete. 12:30, dinner time. Alright, the same area after a single cut. You can see the etching is still present, it's not yet shifted. It's not been lifted or shifted yet. I do want to revisit that, it does need some more work. It was one of the areas the customer was quite concerned about. Etchings can leave some damage, but otherwise a single cut elsewhere, apart from 2 scratches here, which I'm also going to tackle again. Lovely colour. 1-inch microfiber cutting pad on the Nano, the Hex Nano Carbon Collective Hex Nano Polisher. Love these. The spoiler, 5-inch pad, 3-inch on the perimeter and the edges, but then there's still a few ledges and sills and tight edge panel pieces, where the 1-inch will just now further tickle these areas. Across there and down here. For information on the 1-inch microfiber cut pad and where to find them, there is the link down in the video description below. Discount code JWDP for 10% off through, or courtesy of, Pristine Details. What you saw before in the before footage was a series of scratches and buffer trails induced from somebody having a go at this scratch. It's pretty deep, but they've had a buzz over that with a rotary polisher. The haze that you saw there before, the vertical up and down, the rotary buffer trails. Lapis Blue, it's responding like it's a very hard clear coat. It's taken some battling. It's probably the reason why it's not terrible in the first place. There's obviously, as you can see, swirling, lighter scratches. But a good example to show will be the B pillars, which are a bit softer. That's the nature of the damage across the vehicle. But with there being a 2-stage correction, I still want to get it to 70-80% defect removal. So the combination of pad and polish, cutting compound, Lake Country microfiber and Cartet 3000 diamond cut, it might be that I have to deliver 2 or 3 sets. Taking a break from the polishing for now then, and moving on to the rusty hubs, the discs behind the wheels. For such a relatively new car with low mileage, it really does let the overall appearance of the car down. So with these fresh, it really will add to the icing on the cake at the end result. I know people have their own methods and their own ideas for this, each to their own. This is just my sort of take on it. Items that you're going to need: brake cleaner, your chosen paint of choice, a couple of rolls of masking tape, and then some prep tools. That might be wire wool, it might be a wire brush, or in this case, both. Do make sure you wear appropriate protection for this. The dust isn't ideal. Looking back, I probably should have had safety glasses on as well. But starting to prep the disc, we're using the wire brushes to loosen off any sort of surface material that's damaged or corrosion, and also giving a once over with some wire wool as a very final sort of prep stage before using the brake cleaner to ensure the surface is clean and prepped, ready for paint. Offside rear disc before, offside rear disc after prepping, and then the offside rear disc masked, ready for paint delivery. I know lots of people go straight into the painting after the prep without doing the masking. Obviously you want to mask off the caliper, but any overspray onto the disc the first time the car is sent down the road and the brakes are applied, the overspray on the disc is going to be burnt away. It's going to leave a clean line, it's going to cut all that overspray off the disc face. But at the same time, for the sake of 70p's worth of tape in 20 minutes, I just don't know if that's contamination on the pad, and this is just my process. There will be an edge of mine which is tidied up afterwards when the brakes are first used, but I just don't want to saturate the whole disc because I feel it's unnecessary. After giving the aerosol a good shake, a very light mist is delivered to all four corners, ensuring not to deliver a too heavy paint supply because you get runs and heavy spots and drips. And overall, 3, perhaps 4 even coats were delivered. The only nuisance part of the job really is the area that's otherwise sat behind the caliper. It's an area similar to when you're dressing your tyres, the area where it's contacting the tarmac or the cement on the floor. You can't really get to that properly to dress that area of tyre. The solution: do 90% of the disc, take off the tape, spin the disc to reveal that missed area that once was behind the caliper, remask the area, and just do all four corners quickly again. Tape off and masking off, and that'll do for one night. Back in the morning for some more polishing. You may be wondering why My LHR 15 is out here in the sun. And why there's a load of residue polish on the floor. Well, what happened was I was moving my cart around to the offside of the vehicle to work down this side of the car. When I say cart, the trolley system here. The polisher fell off the cart into my spearing bucket, and there's about 2 inches of water at the bottom of the bucket. Luckily, it wasn't plugged in at the wall at the time, but it swallowed a ton of water. So I'm reluctant to fire it up. Certainly, it's been out there since, it's been out there 3.5 hours. I'm gonna leave it until tomorrow. I'm likely to actually break out the 21 at this point. There he is. That is if I've got, of course, a microfiber cut pad that's fresh to fix that. Otherwise, it's used the Duetto, which is more than capable, but it is quite a chunky, hard clear coat, so we need a bit more bite. Touched a tiny bit about the use of a 6-inch pad in the last episode, in the Porsche episode. It is not possible to complete a car with just one machine, be that a 3-inch or be that a 6-inch. It's a bit like decorating. You wouldn't be able to do the white emulsion with a big 8-inch roller tight to the grey door frame, around the window switch, around the power switch, around the skirting boards. It's just not an efficient way of painting the wall. You would use a big roller for the bulk, then you would use a 1-inch or a 2-inch brush to do the cutting in. Much the same for detailing. Mark 7 Golf is pretty ledgy. There's plenty of sharp edges and angles. The bottom of the door, or the side scale I suppose. Obviously gloss black, thin on the side, but then there's this inch upward spacing. For the middle of there, that's fine, you can do so by polishing the door open and getting that way. But there are 2 restrictions when you get to this part and that part. So I'm going to do them first. Obviously, you want to mask off that area because there's a high chance of striking the other side of the door. And whereas when you're doing this bit, the door's open, it's clear with no obstruction. Still on the Hex Nano, still a diamond cut 3000. Before, after. That's not actually a fair comparison because the after is on the rear door and the before is in a much heavier use area on the front door, and yet to tackle that. So this is going to need more than 1 or 2 cuts, but at the same time being mindful. It is a sharp edge, it's going to be thin, and it isn't going to be perfect. But improvements are needed, that's for sure. Let's use that scratch as a reference point of before and after. All right, there's the scratch. That was never coming out, not on a minor paint correction. But the rest of it For 2 cuts, it's pretty good. Ignore the black, gloss black side skirt, it's yet to be done. But that heavy traffic area section is much cleaner and more than acceptable for the nature of the booking. As one of the last remaining major panels left to correct, I'm having fun at the front end here on the bumper. It's not so much scratched up and swirly. There are bug etchings present, however. Stubborn etchings need polishing away. But it's just the complexity, it's just the intricacies of mainly the gloss black up in the top corner, down there in the bottom channel, up here, through there, across there. Got all this to look forward to as well. But it's the very bottom corners, like so, up, down the side, underneath, all this. That's stubborn that it wouldn't have ever come away during the wash, so it does need a little abrasive, it does need a little polish. A little black fin down here. Obviously when you're polishing that, there's a good chance you can strike the blue, so you're gonna have to mask off the blue to polish that, and then when you polish the blue, mask off that so you don't strike the black. But here's one I've done earlier, exactly here, look, polishing the blue, masking the black. There are stone chips and it hasn't been refined and it's not finished, but it's all cleaner, it's all sharper underneath, around the sides, in the edges, in the bottom corners and channels. Three-inch polisher, 1 inch, 1 inch, 3-inch finger polishing, 1 inch underneath there. It's going to be 3 inch for the lights with some 1 inch work in the corners, I'm sure. Then that just leaves the pillars and this small little section here as well. Be nice to see this one out in the sun. The light clusters have been done already, off camera. At this point, we're going on. Are you recording? Yes. Hi. We're going on to the refining stage. So the cutting, the defect removal phase is out of the way. I'm talking like this because if you've not been here before, it's all a bit new to you. Perhaps the cutting, the polishing, the refining, the 1 stage, 2 stage, 3 stage, it's all a bit foreign to you, perhaps. With the Golf, I'm fortunate in that it's a hard clear coat, so the cutting that I've done to remove the defects has left very little in the way of my own damage on the surface of the paint. If it was a slightly softer clear coat, the combination I've used would have been leaving machine marks and holograms, evidence that I had been there cutting, which is then very important. I do the refining pass, which is a much milder, softer approach to take out my own marks and level the finish further. Diagram. Right, bear with me. Cross section of the paintwork, looking across the paint. The Golf before had divots, it had deeper scratches, it had swirls, etchings. The surface just it wasn't uniform, it wasn't flat. When light comes down, it refracts off these sharp edges and it looks terrible because it's uneven and it needs to be leveled, essentially. This is where a different colour marker would come in handy, but I haven't got one. So what I've done at this point, I've used the cutting pass. It's not a full major correction, we're not chasing paint perfection, so we're not getting to the very bottoms of all of the scratches. But what we've done, essentially, the perforated line is clear coat's new level. So only the deepest scores are now still present on the clear coat. Everything above there has been turned to dust. Punch in a bit closer on a more magnified level on a cross section. The cutting, although it's better, is this going to work? Although there are still the three bottoms of the deeper scratches that we haven't chased out fully, the actual clear coat itself is a little bit wobbly, it's a little bit hazy, a little bit uneven, it needs to be leveled further. So cutting leaves it like that, whereas refining levels that further and it's a much flatter glass-like finish, which when the light comes down, it's mirror-like and there's no defects and distortion, basically. So that's exactly what I'm doing now. I've already used Diamond 3000 Artec to do the cutting, which, as we've just learned, it isn't the most flatter finishes. I'm now using 12,000, which is very, very, very mild, on black finishing pads. These are super soft, super squidgy, and really it shouldn't take much time at all. I say that, a full refining pass, single stage polish, 3-4 hours, thereabouts, to get this now jeweled sharp, ready to think about some protection later on. Many people have asked in the comments or messages on direct message and Instagram, you've polished it, refined in it, I'm about to use the vehicle blower for why. If this was a very soft and finicky clear coat, there is nearly invisible dust, lint, polish, foam fragmentation of the pad on the panel. I don't want to put my towel straight to this, so first of all I'm going to blow it to eliminate all that surrounding dust on the adjacent panels and then buff it off. It's much safer. There's no risk of marring being induced. Because trust me, I've been there, done that. Refined the area, inspected it with the lights, covered in marring. Why? You put it in yourself with a dirty towel from contamination off the panel. Good morning, Jim. Hope you're well. Enjoying the last video of the Porsche Boxster. What a colour. Can I ask the Nano Polisher, the one I have is the same as the Carbon Collective Hex. What kind of speeds do you run it? I'm using the 1-inch microfiber cut pads from Pristine Detail. Yeah, they're available, by the way. Discount code JWDP. Did I mention that already? So this little bad boy, it's still warm. This has been rebodied 4 or 5 different times by different people. This is the Carbon Collective Hex version. There are others out there available. But what speeds do I use? Usually, if it's a fresh battery, that's quite important. And it depends on the area as well. If it's the lower portion of a fin down here with a high danger that you could slip if you're not in full control of the machine, I'll be on about speed 4. But then if it's on the top of the door, the 1-inch section, which you've seen me do already, maybe up to speed 5. And as the battery progressively dies, you will notice that speed 6 actually becomes speed 4. So because it's got less juice, it's got less power, speed 6 on a fresh battery is a little bit insane, it's a bit overkill. Once you get going with it, you'll pick up, you'll feel by the vibration or the sound where you want to be. I've never once used it on speed 7, put it that way. But yeah, still a good bit of kit. Since using this, I haven't reached for the hybrid once. In fact, the cost difference is quite considerable. If I was just starting out, or if I had to replace my 1-inch Nano Polisher, would I buy an hybrid? Nope. I've got 2. Don't need them. And before we get going over the coatings, whilst I've still got you, lots of love coming in for the channel this morning. The most recent comment reads, after watching some of your videos and taking notes of your techniques for edge work, the residue control, etc., I noticed my last polishing job had a much better result than prior when I wasn't using some of your techniques. So that's nice, it's good to hear that stuff is being taken away and I am able to help the community with little bits of tips and tricks. And then Steve says, I needed to get to bed, and this video popped up. It's now 2:15 AM. I watched it all and I loved every second. Subscribed. Good stuff. When you clean the glass, don't forget to drop the windows to get the hidden spots that's otherwise normally up here. Infrared curing process, working around the car, got the glass to do, got the exhausts to do, got to get the wheels wiped down with the M1 shot and back on the car, got the grille, the door shuts, and then a very final wipe down again, M1 shot. tip for interior windscreen cleaning. There's no need to spray directly up onto the glass. What a mistake that is. You're going to get drips and overspray all over the dash, which you don't really need or want. Extra work and potentially could cause staining if you don't pick up the drips off the leather or suede or whatever it might be. So don't spray on the glass, and also it can drip all the way down to the bottom of the scuttle beyond the point where you can reach. So if the glass is coming down and the dash is here, but then it's dripped sort of beyond that, which is visible from the outside, you soon will have drips that you can't get to. So spray, 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 wipe, 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 buff, buff, buff. There's a link below to the glass cleaning episode, which I did a couple of years ago. So if you would like more information on proper glass cleaning, click here or down there, or however it works. Ten to 5, done. I'd like to get this car outside now. It's going to be pretty stunning in the late afternoon sunshine. Lapis Blue Golf R complete. 2 to 3 stage paint correction, wheel hubs painted, wheel coatings, paint coatings, no interior, just a courtesy wipe and a vac, because when you're polishing, the doors open over the roof rail or the side skirt or whatever, lint and dust is going to get on the seats and the upholstery, so it's just had a courtesy once over, just tidy that up. As always, if you've made it through this far, thank you for your time, thank you for your support. White Details, it's in a nice place. In a minute, there's been lots of nice love and messages come through on various platforms, DMs and email. And in terms of the diary, I am pretty much booked up for a few months. That's always the case, but if you are interested, feel free to drop an email and bear with me. I do my best to get back to people as soon as I can. Don't forget, White Details merchandise is available. Links down in the video description below. You can buy me a coffee if you'd like. I'd very much appreciate the support there. Be sure to head over to Instagram and find White Details there for daily insights and behind the scenes. Subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Give the video a like if you've enjoyed it. It'll help the video to reach more new people. And until next time, take care and bye for now.
That's how it should have looked when I bought it. That is not too long. I'm going to have to leave it here, I think.
I'm going to take it outside.
At least if it's a dry day.
Yeah.
You're going to get 640 down here.